Armoire makes getting dressed easy. With a clothing rental membership from Armoire, build the perfect wardrobe with brands that are high quality, unique, and recommended just for you. All you have to do is take a 5-minute style quiz and select items from your dynamic personalized closet. The styles show up at your door in as little as 2 days. Then when you're ready for new clothes, just swap them out for more new-to-you styles. Now, I went on a girls' trip to Santa Fe recently, and I rented all of my outfits from Armoire. It was so much fun putting together a mix of casual and formal looks, and my favorite was this pair of white, wide-legged jeans from Paige that went well with everything. Now, I wouldn't normally own anything white because I can be kind of clumsy, but with Armoire, I just ship it back and they'll take care of keeping the pants in pristine condition. Right now, our listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. Just visit armoire.style/dateable. That is armoire.style, spelled ARMOIRE.style/DATEABLE to get up to 50% off your first month and never worry about what to wear again. Try Armoire today.
San Francisco, we have so many events for you this week to celebrate the release of How to Be Dateable and hope to see your lovely faces. First off, we'll be at Neon on Union Street from 6 to 8 p.m. on Friday, February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, for our SF book launch event, where we'll be doing a live show around the dating archetypes with drinks, snacks, and mingling as well. If you're in the North Bay or enjoy hiking in Marin, come out on Saturday, February 15th to book passage from 4 to 6 p.m., where we'll have a conversation about how to be dateable with Dr. Marie Tuin, who has also been on our show before. And last but not least, come out to Manny's in the Mission on Tuesday, February 18th, where we'll be doing a salon-style talk about the love crisis and how to escape it from 6 to 7 p.m. We'll also have all these events posted on our website at dateablepodcast.com/events. We hope to see you there for all the SF local folks, and for everyone else, let us know if we should come to your city and where. Feel free to reach out to us at hello@dateablepodcast.com, and we hope to see you soon. Now on to the show.
Hi, I'm Yue Xu.
And I'm Julie Krafchick.
We're active daters turned dating insiders.
Here to dive into everything modern dating and relationships.
Welcome to Dateable. Hello, friends.
Welcome back to another episode of Dateable.
Can we say this 500 more times? Never gets old. That's what I'm saying, Julie. I'm just saying it never gets old because we've done this over 500 times.
I'm down to say it another 500 times. I'm ready.
That's all I'm trying to say. It's like it just never gets old, and we love having you all back. It's been a whirlwind of a start of a year with all kinds of things that have happened. But I think for both of us to have released our book into the universe, we're still reeling in the excitement and anxiety from that. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
I still can't get over that it's only February. I feel like it's already been like 2025.
Yeah. Wait, what is it? 2025. It is 2025.
Yes, it's still 2025, 1 month in. But, you know, between like the LA fires, like all of that craziness, I mean, just the book prep, clearly, I've been planning a wedding. It's just like a lot happening, and it's a lot.
We started doing interviews on other people's podcasts a few months ago, and been on how many? How many did we do?
It was like 40 to 50, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I've lost track.
Feels so strange right now. It's like a lot of them are getting released currently or have been released already. So it kind of feels like we might feel like we're everywhere, but we did these a while ago. So it's just kind of funny. They're all coming out now.
Oh my God, if we had really done them just the week of the release, we would not have slept.
Oh,
we would have just been doing it nonstop. But yeah, people should definitely go check them out though. Just search Dateable pretty much in Spotify. Spotify is easier to search in, but you know, you can search and figure it out on Apple too. But yeah, we'll link all of them too once we kind of have them all roll out and just have it all in one place where people can hear us on all these other podcasts, because it's a good way to also discover new shows.
And every conversation was different. believe it or not.
It was. It truly was. And, it was really fun. I actually really loved this part of the process because I think, having a book, it's an excuse to be like, yeah, I have something to talk about. And we were able to make we were obviously able to reconnect with our existing podcast friends, but we were also able to make new ones, including our guest today, Beth Gulotta, who we are so happy to have on this podcast because, she's a licensed mental health counselor and host of the podcast Quiet the Clock. We were on her podcast. This topic we know resonates with a lot of you all, and it certainly has been something that's been hard for me of just being like, I'm not always where I want to be in life, and I want to get to that next stage. And, I really think like having this conversation with her was one of those like little silver lining moments that were like, great, this will be perfect for our podcast.
It's nice to hear how other people have done it. And the way Beth has done it, her timeline is very non-traditional. You'll hear more about that. But it's always nice to know that everybody can make it their own. And sometimes this timeline, this clock we have internally, we have to understand where it's coming from. And most of the time, what I find with myself is it's self-imposed. There's nobody else pressuring me to be on this clock, this ticking clock, than me. I am the only one keeping time.
So it is, but then I did listen in our replay. She does challenge you a little on that it came in from all societal influences. So I agree. There's no one like being like, Yue, you need to do this, or Julie, you need to do this. But we are getting that influence. It's not like we're just like, oh, we need to move to the next stage or get married, have kids, all the stuff.
Yeah. And we feel so siloed in the way we deal with pace, in way we live our lives. We're always comparing ourselves.
Yeah.
And everything is so public these days, and people only post their highlights or milestones or celebrations. And I'm sure there are people who've seen our book announcement and were like, oh, they wrote a book overnight? This came out of nowhere. Who knew? But we've been working on this for almost 4 years. To us, it was definitely not overnight. And that's a problem with the way we discover information these days. It's like we don't see the process. There's no in between. It's like, boom, the milestone's here.
It's also hard to see how far you've come because you're always trying to get to that next stage. Like I can see that with the book, and then also, with our own lives. And, I just remember feeling like I was being left behind. Like I remember that feeling, especially when I hit 30. That was like for me, I feel like by the time I hit 35, I kind of hit a point that I just didn't give a fuck anymore. Or like, kind of felt a little more at ease. But 30-ish was like a really tough time. Like those, like 30 to 35. I think that range. That was also like the time where like all my friends were getting married. I had just like ended something that I thought was serious. And I was like, okay, here I am, single again. Everyone's moving on, and I'm like not where I want to be. And I found that very difficult that time in my life to navigate.
I think a lot of people will relate to that, especially being in their 30s, because I think that decade is when all the milestones are portrayed in the media. That is literally the decade that every movie focuses on. It's about marriage, kids, career. But then I think after you get over your 30s and then the 40s and 50s, there's kind of this curve. You start realizing that those milestones, they also bleed into the next part of your life, and they don't have the same sort of weight because there's way more to life than what you accomplish in your 30s.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it can trickle depending on how much you've like come to terms with this stuff too. Like I definitely know people in 40s and up that also like face this. I don't think like ever immune to it. It's more of like the shift of mindset that you have towards it. And that's why I think this episode will really help people get to that place, because it will, take that pressure off and figure out the ways that you can like start to enjoy where you are in that moment. And I know easier said than done, but Beth definitely gives us a lot of like actual tangible options and misconceptions and like things that I think for me at least, hearing it was a relief because I admit even like I think there's always more, right? Like I feel like even though I'm like now at the place where I am like engaged, I'm like, oh my God, am I too old to have kids? Will that be a problem? So there's always like some anxieties about, timelines and all of that.
So if you're feeling like you're not where you want to be right now, or are you feeling like this is not how you pictured your life at this point in your life, this is also an episode for you because we certainly all feel that pressure at every point.
Yeah. And I think especially, if you find yourself comparing yourself to others or you see other people in your friend group going through different changes, this will help you feel like you're not alone because you are not. There are many people that feel this way. And, we'll also go into the value of meeting someone later in life because I think there are a lot of values and it's hard to see that when you're in the thick of it. But I'll speak for myself. I'm really glad now things unraveled the way they did. I think in the moment, maybe I was like, I wish I was at the same speed. I'm glad I didn't marry who I was with at that point. In retrospect, but like in the moment, it was very difficult.
I know it's so hard when you're in it and you feel like you failed in some way or you're so behind in some way. But in retrospect, everything makes sense. And it's probably good to have someone like Beth to speak to this, who's worked with clients who've gotten to the other side. In my 40s, a lot of the stuff that mattered in my 30s they just don't matter anymore because I now see my friends in a different phase in life where it's like, oh, okay, everybody had to go through what they had to go through. And it all makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah, well, we'll leave it to Beth because we'll go in so much more detail. If you are in the Bay Area, we actually have a lot coming up this week. UA will be in town, which is very exciting. And we will be doing like 3 events we have lined up and a TV appearance, which will be super fun. We're going to be on Cron 4 Live in the Bay, which is like a local talk show that I'm very excited about. I'm not sure what to expect, but I think it'll be super fun. So I guess you can tune in. Well, hopefully we'll have some clip that we can share out for anyone that's not local also. But, if you are local, try to find it.
Yeah. So if you're in the Bay, there's so many events for you to go to. But if you're in a city that we haven't mentioned and you want to do something, partner with us on a book event, or someone who'd be interested, let us know. People were like, what's your book tour? Like we have this extensive schedule of going across the country. We don't. We're actually very open to any ideas y'all have. We just don't have the connections in these cities that Julie and I haven't lived in. So if you want us in your city, let us know and link us up with a partner who would be interested in having us.
I do think the book tour changed a lot in the pandemic. Like podcasts became the new book tour. But apparently there's a revival of bookstores so much that Barnes and Nobles are opening because of TikTok and Book Talk. So yeah, I think there is this opportunity now in this wave that we can be in more bookstores. So we're really excited. We're going to be in Book Passage in Marin. They apparently have a massive space. We're going to be in convo with Dr. Marie Tuin. This is a free event. So if you're in Marin, obviously stop by. But if you're in SF, I love Marin. It is literally, it's my favorite place. So go for a hike and then come see us because it's just magnificent there. It's so beautiful.
Wait, what's the best way for people to go to Marin from San Francisco?
I mean, honestly, it depends where you live. But if you live in the northern part of San Francisco, it is like a 20-minute drive. An Uber there is potentially less expensive than an Uber across town.
Okay, so Uber.
You could do that. Or you can take the ferry to, although I don't think you could take it to Corte Madera where we are. So maybe an Uber or driving is best.
Okay. Or you can comment in our Facebook group and see if anybody wants to carpool. I'm sure there are plenty of people wanting to do that.
And also we do have a really great event for anyone in the city too. We have 2 events coming up, but we have one at Neon, which is a really cool space in the marina on Union Street. I walk by there all the time because I live nearby, and we're doing an event on Valentine's Day. And we're going to talk about discovering dating archetypes, which we all love. We know you all love it because that episode did really well. And And we see how many people are taking this quiz. It's insane. But we're going to have an opportunity where you can come and we can answer questions about it. You can talk it out with people. We're going to really go like deep dive on the archetypes. So it's going to be really fun. Also, there will be an opportunity to like mix and mingle after. So, you know, if you don't have plans on Valentine's Day, which I know for me used to be one of those days that I just pretended like didn't exist. But now I'm like, why didn't I just go out and meet people, you know?
For the record, it's not a singles event.
No, it's not.
We do not throw singles events, but there's a possibility there's single people there. There's a possibility there are people who aren't single there. There you go.
Yes. And there may be an after party and there may be a cake. So just putting it out there, there's going to be some celebration element to it as well.
Very cryptic. But at least we know we'll be there. That is
we will be there.
Definite.
We will be there. And then we also have an event on Tuesday, the 18th, at Manny's, which is an incredible space. I've seen so many great talks there, and we're going to go into the love crisis and talk about that. So a little different shift, so you can come to both or come to whichever one fits your schedule. I love that we have this like array of events that are all interconnected to the book, but actually very different.
Very different. Yeah, you can go to all of them. We would love to see you all at all of them. We'll be best friends by the end of the week.
Yes. And Yue, I'm excited for you to be in town.
Yes.
We're going to do the catering tasting that we talked about in the brunch talk last week. And then we're going to treat ourselves and do like a celebratory meal, just the two of us, because it's been a lot this year and we made it.
And we deserve it. We deserve it. I'm counting on Julie's culinary expertise to lead us to a great restaurant.
And hopefully we'll do a hike or two also, so we're not just eating the whole time.
I just expect full-on eating. I'm only bringing spandex with me.
So we are doing the catering tasting prior to the book event on Saturday. So if you see us in stretchy pants, that's why.
If you see us a little slow, there might be a reason. Just a little food coma.
We have enough time to digest between the events, so it's okay. It's not like we're just like rolling up after. We got like a good couple hours between.
No, we're gonna walk. We're gonna walk from the tasting to book passage. It'll take us 8 hours, but it's fine.
Let's walk it off.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, so many fun events where, you know, again, just thank you for everyone who's been supporting us. It has meant so much. I personally can't even keep up with all the posts in Instagram. Like I'm trying to retag as many as I see. And I know you are too, Yue. It's just like there's been a lot. So appreciate everyone. Thank you to all our podcast friends, like the people that had us on their podcasts, like Beth. Definitely check out us on her podcast and all the other ones. Again, we will link this so you have it all. And yeah, all of you for your support. I love my brother is like literally on a hunt to every Barnes & Noble in New York. And today he sent me a photo and it was like a girl looking at it. And he's like, it's because I moved it. And then she started to look at it.
Oh my God. Can we just put out a request? I don't know if this is legal, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so I went to the Barnes & Noble near my parents' house in like obscure town in South Orange County. And they had one copy and it was definitely tucked away. And I pulled it out and turned facing you so that it feels like it's a featured book. If you do find our book at any bookstore that's tucked away, can you just like pull it out and you don't have to like place it anywhere, just put the cover out front, because can we take a moment for our cover too? It's beautiful. It should be seen by more people, and it's very recognizable.
And I love that, you know, you never know who's in the bookstore either watching you. My brother is not eligible. He is married with 2 kids, but that woman didn't know.
So do you think she bought the book?
I don't know. He said she was looking at it for a long time, but he left.
He didn't follow her? What kind of brother is this?
Hey, he's planting the seed.
He should have gone over and said, "Oh, I think that might be the last copy." I was really hoping to get that one, but here, you can take it. I'll just tell the store to reorder more. But you're so lucky.
You know what? My mom actually bought a last copy in a Barnes & Noble near her because it's actually for my dad's hygienist because she's going through a divorce, so they're buying the book for her. And she was like, "Oh, should I buy it? Because I don't want to like, you know, take the last copy." And the woman was like, "Yeah, this book's been selling a lot and we'll order more." And she's like, "Great." So, yeah. The hygienist gets to be dateable. All good in the world.
All hygienists should be dateable.
They already are. There we go.
Speaking of hygienists, you know that I crack 3 teeth. Julie knows this. And if you follow me on Instagram, I cracked 3 teeth the week of pub day because of all the grinding from, I don't know, maybe a stress. And it's really ironic to me because I'm not stressed during the day. I'm more stressed when I'm asleep.
I
than
am
I am.
too.
I'm like, what am I stressed about?
And I wake up really early, like kind of stressed out about stuff.
And it's like odd because when I'm awake, I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected. But my dentist, he's like, your teeth are out of control because he sees more cracks coming in. And he's all about preserving my teeth. So he's like, you got to either wear a mouth guard or we got to do something about this. So I put out this request on my Instagram asking people for their advice because I don't want to, here are the things, I don't want to do Botox because it's a forever thing. And I don't want to be spending like $1,000 on Botox for the rest of my life for teeth grinding. I want like a one and done solution. Yeah. I had 3 people recommend hypnotherapy. So I'm going to try those out or like at least do a consultation. Another person recommended acupuncture, which I'm also very interested in trying. And there are so many people who are like, you should just chill out more. So, Julie, you should just chill out more. Can you, when you go to bed,
that
just be like, chill out more. Don't be so stressed.
Well, keep us posted on what you end up doing and don't take that advice. Just don't be anxious. And don't worry, we will never give you that advice in our book, How to Be Dateable. Never. So if you haven't bought it yet, go out and get it today. You will not get generic bad advice like that. We promise.
You won't. And if you know how to stop grinding in your sleep, let me know. Let us know. We both need some advice.
Okay. Well, before we get into it, I'm not sure where to go from there. So we're going to just transition to Beth at this point. So before we get into it, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. We all know that February is the month of love, and it's time to keep that Valentine's Day energy going all month long. Elevate your passion using the natural power of cannabis with Via. My go-to gummy is still the Flow State CBD one. It's THC-free with herbal plant extracts and functional mushrooms designed to support brain function, boost energy, and enhance mental focus. But this month, when love is in the air, I highly recommend trying out their best-selling High Love Gummy that will awaken your senses, increase blood flow, and intensify any sexual experience. And the best part, Via legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee. No medical card required. If you're 21 plus, head to viahemp.com and use the code DATEABLE to receive 15% off. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. That's VIIA hemp.com and use the code DATEABLE at checkout. After you purchase, they ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. This month of love, elevate your love life with Via.
Let's be honest. We all stress about our relationship sometimes, right? But what if those thoughts take over your life and you feel this deep need to do something about them? Maybe this drives you to constantly check for signs that your relationship's okay, ask for reassurance from your partner or loved ones, or compare your relationship to others. These can be signs of relationship OCD, a type of obsessive compulsive disorder that focuses on your relationships. Now, not every therapist understands OCD or is qualified to treat it effectively, which can make it difficult to find the right kind of help. And that's where NoCD comes in. With NoCD, you can do virtual therapy with a licensed therapist who specializes in treating all types of OCD. They can teach you how to set those fears and doubts aside so that you can enjoy your relationship and your life. To find out more about therapy with NoCD, go to nocd.com and book a free 15-minute call with their team. That's nocd.com to learn more and book a free call. Trust me, it's worth your time to talk to someone who can uncover what's really going on and help you get your life back.
Okay, let's hear it from Beth about quieting the clock.
Beth, so nice to see you.
I know, like we were saying, old friends. It's so nice to be here and to be on the other side. I just had you ladies on my podcast. Excited for that to go live, but very excited to be here on your podcast.
And now we get to ask you all the questions.
Love it.
Yes, all the stuff that we've been dying to ask, because this is a hot topic. Quieting the clock. That's your podcast, your area of expertise. And we know you have your own experiences. You hear from your clients. Yue and I both have struggled with this from time to time. So we're excited to get into it.
It is such a hot topic. And I was having this conversation with someone earlier this week, like, we're all feeling it in some way, like the pressure, the timelines. And so it's exciting to have platforms now where we're like openly talking about that and relating and not dealing with that in isolation.
Yeah. Tell us about your story. How were you inspired to really hone in on this topic?
Yeah, it's so funny. I get this question a lot. I love this question because I never knew that this would be a podcast. And I think some of the most amazing things in life are born out of our own journeys and experiences. And I think it's really beautiful to kind of do something with that and then pay it forward. So I would always say I was kind of someone that never followed the blueprint or the path we're told to take. I mean, I did do college, but after college, I moved to Europe. And so while some of my other classmates were like jumping into their careers or going on to a master's because they were clear on what they wanted to do, I was like off living in Europe. So even then, that kind of set me behind as that's a narrative a lot of, my clients have used, I've used, other women and men too that I've talked to, like when we're in this comparative perspective. And I came home, I guess I was like a year behind. Everyone was kind of on the jump of things. A lot of friends already knew what they wanted. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did what I thought I should and kind of told, and again, the blueprint, and I went into finance and I was miserable in that. And this started this journey on discovery of what I wanted to do. And it took many, many years and many, many masters to find therapy and mental health counseling. And I'm a mental health counselor. I own a group practice in New York City. And then I hit my early 30s and I had a breakup. I had a breakup with someone that I thought that I would marry and have a family with. And part of that relationship came a large group of other couples. So these were all my friends. This was my social circle. And that relationship ended. And I was single in my early 30s. And I'm watching now all of these friends do all of the things that we should do at the time that we should do them, and get engaged and get married and buy houses and have children. And I'm like looking around, I'm the only one single in my early 30s. And so that started really my journey of feeling behind, feeling like I'm running out of time, kind of misaligned with like the societal milestones of when I'm supposed to do things. And to wrap it up, make it short, I met my partner at 34, which is considered late. And I had a son at 40. I'm trying to have another child at 43. So if you kind of compare my ages to societal timelines, they don't line up. And this is all the things I want to dismantle. Because it didn't align, it created a lot of judgment, self-judgment, external judgment, comparison, sadness, grief, horrible feelings. It wasn't like, oh, yay, I'm single at 34. Oh, yay, right. I'm not pregnant yet. It doesn't, when we hear to the old timelines and narratives, it really often doesn't feel very good.
So where do you think this pressure comes from? Like, part of it is obviously the biological clock, and we'll get into that later in this convo. But even outside of that, I think there is a lot of self-induced pressure of like, by 30, I need to have this figured out. And now we see people going to like, by 40, I need to have it figured out because maybe 30 wasn't necessarily realistic or things didn't fall into place. Like, where does this come from?
It's so funny. We have like these really ridiculous constructs of like, what does it even mean to figure it out? And like, what are we trying to figure out? And I saw this funny meme the other day. It was like, does anyone know what we're doing? Actually, does anyone know? Like, and that's the thing, is this idea that there's like an end goal or there's a arrival to some. Life is constantly evolving. So like, I think even that's a framework we need to dismantle, that like there's something to figure out. Like, I think there is things to figure out. I think we need to figure out how to be happy, how to be present, how to be in acceptance, to be in joy, to be in gratitude. Let's figure out that. But I think it's generational, it's cultural. Like, these are narratives, constructs, and blueprints that are passed down, that are ingrained in the environments that we grow up in religions we grow up in, and cultures we grow up in. We don't even realize that we're picking up these ideas of how we should live our lives, and we hold it and we believe it and we live our lives by it until we're like a little bit older, and we're kind of like, well, wait, this is not making me happy.
In your experience with the clients that you've spoken to about this pressure that people are feeling, what percentage do you think is it self-induced, and what percentage is it actual external pressure.
Ooh.
Because when I think about the pressure I felt, I would say 80% of it was probably self-induced.
But I think the question to ask is like, why is it self-induced? Like, are those parameters really set by yourself, truly by yourself, or were they informed by external messaging? So what happens is we take the external messaging and we take ownership of that as our own desires. So I think what happens is these external messagings, narratives, things that are passed down, blueprints, become ingrained in us, that we own them to be true to what we really want. So then from there, we pick up the pressure, because I've been told since I'm 5 that I should get married by 26. 26 rolls around, I'm not married. I'm like, why am I married? It's my fault. What's wrong with me? I can't meet anybody. So it's tricky. And I think we have to be really careful. And that's something I work with my clients on. It's like, okay, who is telling you that's the goal? Because if it is authentically your own goal, okay, let's work with that. But I think that's where we get in trouble a little bit, is because we don't differentiate, like, whose voice is this? Who is telling me that I should do this? Is it really true to what I actually want? And it can be a really scary thing to deviate from things we're told we should do. You know, I know personally for me, I'll never forget this moment. I was in high school and, you know, this teacher was like, if you want to make money, you go into finance.
Right.
And so that, then I took that on as my own story of like, I need to go into finance. So you got to be really, really careful and get really, really clear on what we're saying to ourselves and whose voice it actually is.
I could see that. It's like the line is so murky, because I think we think of like external pressure as like our parents telling us this, or someone like explicitly saying, but what I'm hearing from you is it's all the influences that are coming at us are external, even though we might not see it that way.
Yeah. And we're bombarded with it now, especially with social media. We're bombarded with it. You can open that app and see somebody getting married, engaged, pregnant, all of these things. And you're like, oh, well, I should have that too. And you're not like, well, do I even want that? And it takes a lot of work to kind of like pause and be reflective of like, I don't really want that right now in my life. Like, I enjoy being single. Like, I'm not ready to be engaged. I'm not the person I want to be yet to invite in a relationship. We so easily get caught up in like what we think we should have and seeing other people have it and saying, I should have it too. And if I don't have it yet, something's wrong with me.
You know what I find perplexing is looking at this from a sociological standpoint, right? I come from a Chinese culture. I was born in China, where the bones are communists and you follow the masses. So in that context, everybody has a clock because it's the same clock and you just follow the same timeline. And when I moved to the US, I thought this is a culture that praises individuality, independence, not following the masses, being unique. And there's still a clock that's imposed on everybody. And it feels like everybody still wants to follow the masses and not be left behind. Is this just a natural way of being human? Like, are we just biologically wired that way?
Right.
I think so. I do. And I think we're moving in the right directions where there's different narratives happening. There's questioning of old narratives and constructs. But I think, you know, everything is so generational and passed on. So it is so completely ingrained. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time to undo and relearn some new narratives and be more accepting of other visions and blueprints. It's interesting because there is always, I think, this internal struggle of like, yeah, I'm cool with where I'm at. I like accept where I'm at. But oh God, like, when am I going to meet somebody? So I think there's more work to be done. I think we're moving in the right direction. But yeah, I think we're hardwired to feel these things.
So when clients come to you and they feel like I'm running out of time, I'm hearing that clock tick, how do you advise them? Like, what do you say to them to get them out of that mindset? Or is it something that you lean into?
I'm so grateful for my work. I'm so grateful to walk alongside, you know, my clients that are doing this work. And I validate. I think it's a very real emotion. It's a very valid emotion. It's one that I felt, and it's one that will pop up always. And that's where it's important to pause and kind of be reflective. So first thing I do would validate. Depending on sort of the nature of the relationship, I'll see if self-disclosure is appropriate and share kind of where I have felt like that and where life has led me. We try to decipher, like I was saying earlier, whose voice is this, who's determining the timeline. And then I try to offer some reassurance. And you know, I think what happens a lot, you know, again, I think it's also this humanistic tendency to compare. And we work with comparison and why are we comparing and what are we comparing to and what is that bringing up for you? So there's a lot of work to do, sort of kind of untangle, like, why are you feeling that way? And then when we do all of that, maybe we move to let's build out a time frame that's really authentic to you. The other thing about life just happens. I mean, we can have a timeline for things. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could decide the timing of everything? I mean, we really can. And then it's also an exploration of the need to control and the need to know, and how do we get comfortable in uncertainty? How do we get curious about uncertainty? How do we get excited about uncertainty? Like, there's so much we just can't plan for, and we can't control, and we can't know. And some of the work is getting comfortable in that, and maybe even beyond that, getting excited about that.
And you talked about comparing. This is something everyone's guilty of, especially with social media these days. How does one start quieting that inner voice that keeps saying, like, you're not enough, or you're not as good as this person?
You know, our brain is naturally wired to go that way. And like the not good enough narrative is so probably deep rooted in, you know, family construct, family dynamics, trauma experiences. Like that's, you know, nuanced and very layered. And that comes from somewhere, and believing that we're not good enough, you know, and that's the beauty of being in therapy. I'm obviously a huge proponent for therapy, is having someone like walk alongside and help unpack some of that. How to move away from comparison. There's a lot of ways you can do that. One is a gratitude practice, getting really, really grateful for what you have now. We have such a hard time being in gratitude for what we have versus being in sadness for what we don't. And I was definitely, you know, guilty of that, you know, and before meeting my partner, Rob, I was definitely, you know, more focused on I don't have a partner versus, oh my God, I have this business. Oh my God, I have this 1-bedroom condo. Oh my God, I have this flexibility and freedom. So it's really a lot of, you know, shifting and really putting some focus of like, what do I have? We get so stuck on what we don't. So I think a gratitude practice is amazing for that. Another thing I try to encourage my clients to do is like, often we compare like one part of the puzzle versus the whole puzzle. So for example, someone is in a relationship and I'm not. So we're just comparing like this person is in a relationship, but maybe it's not a great relationship. Maybe they're unhappy in their job. Maybe they don't have relationships with their families. Like, so we're just taking one piece and being like, that is better than what I have. The problem is we get so fixated on things like partnership, marriage, buying a home as the markers for success, where it's just like, let's broaden the view. There's so many other things that like make us successful.
I just had this conversation actually with a friend of mine yesterday about the like comparing one piece of the puzzle versus the whole thing.
Yeah.
Our minds go there. And I think like another piece too is like this quieting the clock doesn't stop once you find a partner. I feel like in a way it's actually like accentuated for me once I did find a partner, because I think, I think I had this narrative before that like, okay, I am going to meet someone a little later in life because like I was already in my mid-30s. But when that happens, everything moves fast because you're older. And then when that wasn't happening, even though it felt good in many ways, but it wasn't necessarily like this rapid speed of things happening, I started to be like, one, I'm running out of time, but then also like, is there something wrong that we're not moving at this lightning speed?
Right. And that's the narrative that pops up too. Like, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong that I don't have XYZ or whatever it is. And I think it's also in our nature to move the goalposts, right? So now we meet the partner. So when's the ring?
Right,
and now that we have the ring, when's the baby? And now we have the baby, when's the, you know, and that's the beauty of being in gratitude and presence, is because you can appreciate what you have right now, while also like wanting those things. This is not to say like we don't aspire for those things or we don't want those things if they're truly what we want, but we can't get too stuck in that and not be really in gratitude for what we have right now.
And kind of related to that, because we put up a poll on our Instagram asking people what are their biggest fears. And so many people wrote, I'm afraid to be the last to. Like it's always, I'm afraid to be the last to get married in my friend group. I'm afraid to be the last to have kids in my friend group.
Interesting.
So many people feel left behind, and that their friend group is moving forward and their life is stuck. So what do you say to someone like that? Because I know to me, I'm like new friends, but is that really the solution?
Yes, that is part of the solution. I found myself there too. You know, what I was sharing earlier, like getting out of this relationship in my early 30s, and my friend group, my social group was all these other couples. And now that, you know, had ended, and I maintained some of those friendships, but it was different. We did things as couples, and I found a whole new friend group. One of the things we had talked about on a recent episode that came out was age gap friendships. And I found myself kind of in my 30s. I was bartending in the city and I was hanging out with 20-something-year-olds. But you have to let go of that age. And, for me, I kind of got hung up on that for a little bit. But I'm like, they're all in my life stage. They're all single. They all are available to go out. They're cool. They're creative. They're smart. Like, who cares how old they are? So yes, sometimes it is a new social circle and friend group. The other thing is a lot of it is just shifting the narrative and shifting the perspective. Like, what can be amazing about being the last two? One of the new shifts I'm trying to do personally is like, I'm going through this like secondary infertility journey, and it's been really, really difficult. And life is going to bring up these moments. Like, I get stuck in comparison, seeing other people have their second child, and that comes up. But I'm trying to look at things of like, how is this happening for me?
Yeah.
Right. So how is it happening for me that I'm last? How is that benefiting me? And I think trying to look at it through that lens can change everything, can change the way you feel about it. I feel like there's judgment when you say, what does it mean to be the last two? Like, what are you saying about yourself? Or what are you saying about being the last two that makes that scary? Like, could that be exciting? Like, oh, I'm not married yet. I'm going to pop off to Paris. Like, bye. It's about shifting the lens on it. And I think some of those constructs still come back from these old blueprints. It's like, what have we said about being the last to do that makes it so scary?
Right. It's like there's something wrong with you. And I think like for me personally, I definitely one was finding obviously new friends that were in my stage of life, or not even new friends, but just going deeper with existing friends that were in that stage. But also I kind of let go of caring if I was the fifth or seventh wheel. I think for a while I had this thing maybe I don't want to go because of this. And I'm like, who cares? And now that I do have a partner, I'm still with these friends because I didn't let go of them. But there was never a gap of not being with them. It was just I learned to not care at that point. I was eventually I'll get there. Eventually things will happen. For now, this isn't defining my friendship with them. And the reality was the guys went off and did their own thing and us girls hung out anyways.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens. But yeah, to validate that too, I know so many people feel that. I felt that too. My sister, who is, divorced and single again, has felt that too of fifth wheel, sixth wheel. I think the feeling emerges because we have judgment about being single. If we're sort of really grounded in I'm in acceptance of where I am in my life. I'm grateful to be here because single for me means learning more about myself, more time with friends. Then you're probably less bothered by being around with couples because they're probably people you love. They're probably people you enjoy. And what's better than being in connection with people? But it's when we're in judgment of self or feeling that pressure that those experiences are changed for us.
Yeah. And for years prior to that, that was not how I was. And that's why I'm saying this as a shift, because I remember I ended my most serious relationship outside of the one I'm currently in, right as everyone was heading into wedding season. All my friends were getting married. And of course, I missed this person, but I think the biggest piece was this feeling left behind. And I remember talking to my therapist at the time, I can't believe I'm going to my younger cousin's wedding and I'm the single one and I'm going to all these weddings alone. She's like, no one is looking at you at cocktail hour. They're getting their drink. No one's judging you about being single. But in my head, I went there. So it did take that acknowledging and accepting that this was a real pain, but then also being realistic, your friends still like you. No, everyone just wants a drink at the bar. No one cares.
That's so real. I mean, even what you were saying, Beth, with your sister, it's life is not linear.
Yeah.
You may be the last in your friend group.
No way, but we're taught it is.
Yes.
It's you may be the last for this one particular thing now, but things could change in a few months or a few years. This is everything is temporary. So we don't have to feel the status that we're in right now as being the last is forever.
Yeah. I had a great friend on the podcast as well. And she, similar stories to me, met her partner later, became a mother later than her whole friend group. And she's like, we're still together. Half my friends are divorced. So it's fluid. And you're such a good point that life is not linear. It's so true, but we're taught that it is. And that's what's kind of the learning we have to undo. And, I don't want anyone listening to think, all of these things that we're saying are valid and come up, a comparison or not wanting to be the fifth or sixth wheel. Those are all real and all valid. The work is not to get stuck there. We can acknowledge that. We can kind of understand and process and unpack why we're feeling that, what's coming up for us. But what I encourage everybody to do is don't get stuck in that because you miss out on so much.
No, definitely. I do want to get into the actual biological clock, though, because I feel like we can't ignore this because there is like some truth behind like the older you get. We always talk about it for women, but there are also studies about for men too. But we don't ever talk about like sperm declining and all of that.
Oh my God, that is a conversation we are not having and we need to be having because it is a reality.
So the other piece too, though, is like I was talking to a friend of mine about this and she was saying how, because I was expressing that like I do have these fears that I'm like now getting too old and all the stuff. And she's like, so many women that I've met like in my mom friend groups are like, in their mid 40s having kids. And like that is such a myth that isn't possible. And it's something that we've been told for so long that like once you hit 40, it's over. So like what is your take on all of this? And like, yeah, I can see you have a lot to say.
Yes.
She's like, I'm ready.
I was passionate about this topic before. I'm extremely even more passionate as I go through my secondary infertility journey because I'm just continuing to learn so much. And I think what is so hugely problematic is we're so misinformed and miseducated on our fertility health. I think there's a lot of fear mongering when it comes to our fertility health and some of the narratives out there that are like, 40, people will say 35 is the cliff. I know there are a lot of doctors in the fertility world that will disagree with me, but I got pregnant naturally at 39. I'm trying again at 43. I got pregnant naturally. I mean, I haven't shared this publicly, but I'll put it out there. I got pregnant naturally at 43. Unfortunately, ended in miscarriage, but it's still possible. And the path to motherhood is so possible at any age because there's 1,000,001 ways to do it. And that's where, again, like life is not this one narrow lens. Like if we open up our perspective and vision, like if you really want motherhood, there's so many ways to do that. But again, we're told like there's just one path and it should be this path and it should look like that. And, of course, there's a lot of like debate around IVF and all of these things. But first and foremost, we are so misinformed and we're so miseducated on our fertility health. So the biological clock, it is a real thing. There is a reality to like egg quality declining at a certain age. I don't think it's 35. And this is tricky because as a therapist, I've seen this come up for my clients. There's a lot of fear in going to do that, right? Because no one wants to go and hear something, is wrong. But if you don't know, there can be no plan. And I've had guests on here and I've had clients that they have went and they didn't get great news, but then they were able to spring into action. So you never want to arrive there too late. So the first thing I encourage everybody to do is just understand where you're at in your fertility health and then understand your options. Like egg freezing is obviously an option. There's so many ways through diet and lifestyle. I know fertility doctors will disagree, but I don't agree that we can do to be helping like not just our fertility health, but our overall health. But, if we're talking about biological clock, there's things that we can do. There's so many stories out there that like women were trying to conceive through IVF for years. They went to a holistic functional medicine doctor and they were pregnant in like 6 months. So we just need to be more informed. We need to be equipped and resourced with what our options are. What are my egg freezing options? Where am I financially to afford this? And the education on it needs to be way, 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 way better. But again, there's platforms and conversations happening now. It is a real thing. And I think if you are considering motherhood and you want that, it's kind of our responsibility to go out there and get the information on it. But the cliff is not 35. The cliff is not 40. Like we do have time and we do have options.
What about there's the clock with getting pregnant, but then there's also the clock with like being an older parent.
Yeah.
So you're like nearing retirement age when the kid goes off to college.
Yeah.
How do you get over that psychological shift of like, oh, I don't want to be an older parent?
Yeah, I think, again, that's a very valid thought. I think about that all the time. I can't change my circumstances. I had my son at 40 and I am doing the mental math constantly. Okay, I'll be 60 when he's 20. I'll be this age. Like, can I see grandchildren? And the way I shift now is like, I am just going to keep myself as healthy as possible to be around as long as possible with my son. But for sure, I think about that a lot. However, is there an immense amount of benefit to being an older mother?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am stronger in my sense of self. I am more patient. I am more grounded. I am financially more stable to be able to provide for my son and do things like swimming and soccer. And, there for me was so much angst about being an older mom or maybe not being a mom. And then I have him at 40. And I think this happens with most things is like when we meet the partner later, we're like, oh, this makes sense now. when we have the baby later, it's like, oh, this makes sense now. I know in my soul that I am a much, much better mother being a mom at 40.
I was going to say that I've read studies about this, of like just your emotional capacity being better as you get older. And,
oh my God,
just being aware. Like, I feel like if I had a child at like 20, I would not be aware of like how my actions would like impact their future self and, attachment and all the stuff that now plays such a role as an adult. And being aware of that I mean, I'm not a parent yet, so I don't want to preemptively say this, but I feel like I would go in like being more conscious of what I'm doing, where in the past I would not have.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, we're just more resourced. We're more equipped. We're more, hopefully, right? We're more clear on who we are, what we value. Like you said, like a larger emotional capacity. And that only benefits our children. And, people do it wonderfully at younger ages. But for me specifically, I was trying to build a business at 34. I can imagine I couldn't give my son what I give him now if I was trying to do those things simultaneously. So with anything, I think motherhood, parenthood, partnership, there is a value to these things happening later in life. And I'm so grateful. My only regret is I didn't live in that gratitude more when I was single or it was just Rob and I, because there were moments that I got too stuck on what I didn't have, because it all worked out beautifully, like better than I could imagine. I know that's hard for people to hear when they're still in it, and I'm on the other side of it. But also, I'm in it again, wondering when I'll have this second child. And I'm really working hard to switch. Like, the timing is going to be perfect. Like, it's not meant yet. This isn't happening to me. It's happening for me. I've learned so much more about my health and changes that I've had to make for my health and overall, well-being, that are just going to benefit me for a lifetime. So it's a lot of just perspective, mindset shift.
I want to dive into this even more, but before we do, let's take a quick break to hear from our partners.
Did you know that an estimated 5 billion plastic hand soap and cleaning bottles are thrown away each year? That's a lose-lose situation for you and the planet. Blue Land is on a mission to eliminate single-use plastic by reinventing cleaning essentials to be better for you and the planet with the same powerful clean you're used to. The idea is simple. They offer refillable cleaning products with a beautiful, cohesive design. You just fill your reusable bottles with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. You'll never have to grab bulky cleaning supplies ever again. And I have to say, since switching to Blue Land products at home, I'm experiencing far less allergies and inflammation. And generally, it just feels so good to be using clean products, especially with my dog around. Blue Land has a special offer for our listeners. Right now, get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/dateable. You won't want to miss this. blueland.com/dateable for 15% off. That's blueland.com/dateable to get 15% off.
I've been getting so many compliments lately on my wardrobe, and that's because it looks so damn luxurious. But the secret is that while I like luxury items, I can't always afford them until I discovered Quince. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable price, because who doesn't love the good things in life? Quince offers a range of high-quality items at prices within reach, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50, washable silk tops and dresses, organic cotton sweaters, and 14-karat gold jewelry. I've been pairing my cashmere oversized crew neck sweater with their wool straight leg pants, and I legit look stylish for once. The best part of all is that Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. So give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/dateable for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/dateable to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/dateable. Could your daily routine be full of hormone disruptors? There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living rent-free in our environment right now. In our food, our water, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, our skincare, they all mess with our hormones. The good news is we don't have to suffer through it anymore, because now we have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms of women of all ages. Since I've been using Hormone Harmony, I have felt more balanced. And other women feel the same way. The biggest benefit, they say, is feeling like myself again. That's what women mention over and over in their reviews. And there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code DATEABLE at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use the code DATEABLE for 15% off today. I'm glad that we took that deviation because I think it's important, but I do want to hear like some of maybe more tactical things that you can be doing. Like obviously egg freezing is one. I mean, I think there's a lot of opinions on that. Like I did, for transparency, I did freeze my eggs. I think a big part of it, though, was that I did have my company pay a substantial part of that. And the reality, too, that I need to hold on to is like, while it's nice that I have this option to lean on, I hate when people say it's an insurance policy because like it's never a guarantee. Yeah. So I'm not like a big fan of that language. No. So I'm curious, like your take, and then also like, you started to say like there's other holistic ways and obviously adoption and other methods. I'm curious like what those are for more tactical.
The thing I want to say about the financial piece first is that there's a lot more options now to help finance this. There's a lot
That's good.
Yes. When I was doing it, it was really either like a medical loan or credit card. And I didn't have the money at the time to do it. And I did take out like a no interest credit card. There are more options. There's more like sort of boutique-y places that have like payment plans, or I think there's a company that does like if you donate a certain amount of your eggs, they'll cover it. So just exploring those options. Another thing is you can advocate if you're at a company that doesn't cover it, you can start advocating with them to add that to the insurance policies. I think maybe open enrollment might be over for a lot of places, but if it's not, get in with HR and say, we need to be adding this. A lot of companies are adding it. And I think a lot of women are looking for that option when they look for jobs. So companies are going to have to add it to stay competitive. So if your company doesn't have it, you can advocate for that. You know, I think this conversation is happening in a way that informs younger women. So it could be something that like maybe you're not going to do now, but maybe you start saving for. Like I think, you know, for me, and I never thought I would have to do this. And so I wasn't saving for that. I was like saving to buy a condo. You know, I think some proactive planning for younger women that are hearing this conversations could be really, really helpful. And then it's just a very personal decision. For me, it was worth it to go into debt over it. And that might just be what it is for people. In terms of options outside of financing, of course, there's the egg freezing. And, you know, one question that was a guest had shared was asked to her in a consultation was, how many children do you want to have? And I thought that was an amazing question because that wasn't posed to me. And so being realistic of like, if you want more than one child, that will determine maybe how many rounds you do or how many eggs you're comfortable with. And so that's something to really consider too and be informed on. You know, it really isn't 100% foolproof insurance plan. Some women thaw their eggs and none of them work. There's no guarantees. And what makes it so scary too is there's these unknowns and these uncertainties. And it's a huge investment financially and physically and mentally and emotionally. What kind of was the final decision for me, because even after my consult, I was like so overwhelmed. I didn't have the money. I'm like, what's the point? And then I sat with it. I was like, I don't want to regret not trying. I don't want to turn around and be like, why didn't I do this? So whether at least I knew I tried. Beyond that, there's egg donors, there's embryo adoption, there's adoption. So there's, when I say earlier, there's so many paths to motherhood, you know, there's not just one, there are so many. And I think it's the work to sort of open up your vision to it looking different. And I've had so many amazing guests on that have done motherhood on their own through sperm donor. They've done egg donation. They've done embryo adoption, and they're amazingly happy. It was just about kind of opening up their vision to what their path to motherhood would look like. And again, we're sold sort of it's only one path and we get stuck that it has to look that way. And that stuckness on one way of something going doesn't serve us. So there's endless option. Again, it's just, you know, being informed, being educated on what those options are.
We actually have a program called Finding Your Person, where it's like helping you, like, you know, meet the person that you'll end up being with. And we had someone come out of it and they were like, I actually learned from this that I want to have a child on my own. Yeah. And I'm going to go down that path. And we were like, this was a success then. Like maybe it didn't necessarily go down that traditional path, but the fact that that awareness came from the program was incredible to us.
I love that so much. I love sort of doing the work and being reflective and getting really clear on what your own authentic vision is. I think that is so amazing. I think more of us should be doing that. And for a lot of women, like, single motherhood by choice is such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And parenting with someone else is hard. Like, it's hard. It's not easy. Like, you don't have a sole decision making. You have to consult. You might have different styles. And I love that story because it really is about bringing awareness to what is your authentic journey that is so true to you.
And related to that, if people are having a hard time deciphering between what's their voice and what is society telling them to do, obviously you have this course that helped this person find clarity, but what are some ways that you've told your clients to, really understand whose voice is it?
I think having a therapist help you do that is so helpful. But if you don't have a therapist, there's lots of ways you can do that. There's meditation, mindfulness. Like, I think what's problematic is we live in such a hustle culture and we're so distracted all the time. We're so inundated with like information overload all the time that we can't hear our own voice. We're just hearing all this input that's coming at us like 24/7 if we're not choosing to slow down and listen. And so creating a space where there's no distraction, where you can get quiet with yourself. There's amazing meditation prompts, journal prompts. Everyone's got journal prompts and meditation prompts. So you can find something out there, but it's still, I really, really think it's stillness and getting quiet and sort of drowning out this distraction and noise and starting to understand what is actually mine and what is someone else's voice. And I think it's in the stillness and making a practice of stillness that would be helpful to get really clear. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's not like you meditate for 15 minutes and you're like, okay.
Clarity.
We have narratives and judgment around stillness and slowing down, but we have to it's so important to create space for that.
I'm curious, like at the beginning, because you talked about how most of like your clients and people on the podcast are women that are facing this, but there are men too.
I know. I'm dying. Where are all my men? Get on my podcast.
I'm curious because like I feel like from my personal experience, and I have not like done this as a study, so I'm not going to like take claim that this is the stats.
Let's do a study.
We should run a poll. But I feel like the pressure I feel internally is so much louder than what my partner feels and like what other men I've talked to feel. And I know like there are some men that feel it too. So again, this is not scientific at all, but I'm curious like if that's something you've noticed or you do feel like men feel it the same.
They feel it for sure. I don't think they talk about it enough. I don't think they are connected enough to acknowledge that that's what they're feeling. Some men, right? I don't want to generalize. It's hard to say they feel it the same because they don't have the same biological clock. But as we said earlier, there is a lot to be said about male infertility and the rise of that. I think women are just more vocal and more willing to have these conversations. I had an amazing male guest who did speak to feeling like timeline pressure. So I think they feel it. And I'm serious when I say like, I want them to come on. Yeah. In my experience, men can be more internal and process more internally. Luckily I have had access to men in a way through being their therapist that I know that it's there, but a therapy space is very different in how they move through the world and how they share in the world and sort of the vulnerability they open up to in the world. So I think they feel it.
Okay, that's good to hear, I guess.
I think in some ways, sometimes they feel it more than we do.
Interesting. How so?
I'll tell you. Okay, so the podcast was pretty new. And every year we do a holiday party. We try to do outings and dinners and all things. And we're out and we meet a group of guys at the bar, after dinner. And we're having these conversations. And I start sharing about the podcast. And this guy just caught my ear. And he was saying, he's like, we feel all of these things too. But we're not encouraged to go to therapy. There are not resources for us. There's not support for us in the way there is for your women. He's like, I am telling you, we feel all those things. He's like, we want to be encouraged to go to therapy, to read the books. So
interesting.
Obviously, therapy that is there for men and men do go. I just think from what he was saying to me, it's more normalized or socialized for women to seek help. And for men, it is not. We're not there yet. And this is what he was saying to me. And I believe that to be true for a lot of men.
Okay, this is a small sample size, but I had this conversation with a few guy friends and my dad last weekend. And this is what they told me. And I still think this is so interesting. So they're like, the pressure we feel earlier, like in their 20s and 30s, is the pressure to make money, the pressure to provide, the pressure to build assets. And once they have assets, they feel the pressure to pass on the assets to an offspring. And that's when they start feeling the pressure to have kids. That's when the clock starts ticking. It's like, I've built this life. Now I want someone to pass it down to. I don't want this to go to waste. So I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like a similar clock, but kind of not like, none of them said I had felt the pressure to be a father. It's not an identity pressure.
It's a legacy pressure.
Legacy pressure, yes.
That's really interesting.
And my dad felt the same way. I mean, it's small sample size, but still, I'm like, okay, different way.
I also think that pressure stems from these societal gender norms that men have to provide, which also we need to dismantle because they're outdated. So maybe, of course, the pressure manifests in different way, but it's still there, right? I have to do this now. The time is to do this now. You know, in my experience, I found that to be true, that men are like way more linear than women. It's like they can kind of like they do one thing at a time. So it's like establish the career, establish the financial stability, and then I can have partnership. And then I can have family, where women can kind of, I feel like women can do it all at the same time. Like we can do motherhood, we can do career, we can do run the house.
And that's why we're burnt out. Let's be honest.
Yes. Oh my God. Like I had this epiphany the other day. I'm like, running this house is like a freaking third full-time job. Yeah, we are definitely burnt out.
I mean, a big piece of it too is probably just personality too. Like obviously, like, we're talking small sample sizes with all of this, and generalizations. I mean, a piece of it might be like, I'll just use me and my partner as an example. I think he's much better at staying in the present. And I'm always thinking about like the next step and the next stage and all that. And I think it actually works well for us because we can balance each other. Like if you don't have anyone in either direction, things either just don't happen ever, or like you're all just in the future and not enjoying the time. Like, do you think there's some personalities that are just more prone to worrying about this type of stuff and others that aren't?
Yes, for sure. And I think, again, kind of a byproduct of probably something that happened in childhood or ways that we were raised that perpetuates a more anxious mind. That's like probably very nuanced and layered as how we came to be that type of thinker. I do want to say, though, that there is a place for planning and preparing. You know, while it's important to be present and be in gratitude, there is a place for preparing and planning. And part of that, if we're talking about like biological clock, is just know your fertility health, know your options.
Yep.
We just want to be mindful of like, it's serving us to be a little bit in the future in terms of planning. If it's not serving us to be there, if you're noticing you feeling really anxious or stressed or worried about that, that has to be a cue to you to like get out of the future and get more into the present. If like planning and preparing is making you feel more reassured, more at ease, more comfortable, great. It's important to tune into what it's presenting in our bodies and what it's making us feel. But there is definitely a place for that.
I think like for me, if I can get vulnerable for a second, I think part of it is that like I didn't think about this stuff or plan it at all. Like when I was like in my 20s and early 30s, I think I was like, obviously came in stages of wanting more out of relationships and all of that. But I wasn't really thinking like long term about much. And I was maybe more in the present then. And then like when I had the partner that I could envision a life with, it kind of caught up to me. And I think that has been like kind of terrifying and scary in a lot of ways because I maybe didn't feel as prepared if I had done it. But I'm also like trying not to put blame on myself because I'm like, I just wasn't there. Like I froze my eggs when I was 37, which is technically like too late. And it's like, of course, if I could go back in time, I wish I had done it at 30, but I just wasn't there at all at that stage.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where you just have to offer some compassion and sort of reality testing. Like no one was talking about this when we were 30. Like no one was talking about this in our 20s. We're talking about it now, and we're not in our 20s. And you guys are still in your 30s.
No, we're 40s. No one believes us.
Oh, 40 crew.
We're the same age, Beth.
40
you and I are the same age.
I love it. Yeah. So to be fair to ourselves, to offer ourselves some compassion, these were not conversations that were happening in our 20s and early 30s. And so the shift there can be, I'm so proud of myself that I did it at 37.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful I was present in my 20s and early 30s because there was a purpose to that presence and there was a purpose to what I was focusing on then. So offering ourselves some compassion is really, really important. And it's such a huge shift. So I would say to you, like, awesome for doing it at 37.
Thank you.
But Dan, can I just say the pressure women have and the emotional burden that we feel all the time, like in your example, Julie, yes, of course, it's great to stay in the present. La La Land. Okay. But if we're taught now, it's like at 30, you should start thinking about future kids and family planning. Women are constantly thinking 5 steps ahead because we fucking have to. So that's the part that really pisses me off. It's like, as much as I love to stay in the present, like a lot of my male counterparts, we have to think ahead though. Like with egg freezing.
Yeah.
That's thinking ahead.
I know. We've had so many conversations about that, about the burden and the responsibility placed on women, especially, single women that go through this. They're paying for it financially. They're going through it with physically. They're going through it emotionally. And that might be what sets their future partner up for the possibility of a family, So it's so true. It's so valid. A lot falls on us as women. And I think that's where it's important to offer ourselves compassion, to slow down, to give ourselves grace, to find communities of other women that support us because it's true. And it's frustrating. I met a woman at an event and she's like, I'm angry. I'm so angry that I'm like, that's valid.
Yeah.
That is valid. Yeah. If we don't own it, it's still our lives too. My partner is very involved and very helpful, but so much falls on others. Like so much, like it is your head could spin all the things you have to like do and keep track of. And, sometimes we're not recognized for that. Like I'll even say like, there's toilet paper in this, not to him, but like, I think that like there's toilet paper here because I get the toilet paper and there's paper towels and there's food, so it's like, I think it'd be nice to be sort of recognized for all that we do and all that we carry and all the sort of burdens that are ours to kind of hold.
Definitely. I like how real this conversation is. Like, I hope it left people feeling hopeful too, but also like, okay, that you can feel what you're feeling and like it's natural.
Totally.
Before we get into takeaways, I guess like what's kind of some parting words you would leave for someone that's feeling like I'm not where I want to be right now and how to shift out of that?
I think the first thing I want to make clear is like all of these things are valid. It's not to say like you won't get caught in comparison, you won't feel left behind. What I'm saying is like, let's not stay in that for too long. I don't want anyone to listen and say like thinking I'm like, just be grateful, just to be present. Like, yes. And all the things that you're feeling are so valid. And I've felt them too. Let's try to change the perspective. Let's try to look through a different lens. What I always say to clients, it's like, let's make room for all the narratives. If we're going to say X, like, okay, what's Y? What's Z? Like, let's not just land on one thing. Let's just not land on like, I'm single and I'm never going to meet anybody. Let's land on, I'm single and I enjoy the opportunity to like meet new people. And so we just have to invite and make space for other narratives other than the ones that are just perpetuating sadness, depression, and anxiety. This is so cliche, but life is short. Life is unexpected. We're not guaranteed every day.
Yeah.
And just kind of finding small moments of joy. There's joy in every day if we're really looking for it.
I love that. And I guess it's a good segue to takeaways because I think you can, like both can be true. Like you can be feeling certain ways, but then you can also appreciate what is good in whatever stage you're at. I think another piece too is like, unless you can figure out ways to manage this, there's no like silver bullet of like when you get X, this will just end.
Yeah.
It keeps going. And this is just a state of, feeling like there's always the next milestone to reach and thing to do. And I actually put up a post on our Instagram about, like reflecting back, like when we finished our audiobook of like 10 years ago, I was, single and heartbroken and all this stuff.
Oh, I saw that post. I loved it. I loved it.
And then now 10 years later, it's like I'm doing this audiobook and met someone, all this. And one of my friends wrote on the post and she's like, don't forget about the middle. And I was like, that's so important. And I'm like, it's so important because that is where like all the growth happened and like all, there were so many memories and so many things that like got me to where I was. She was like, yeah, don't forget about the hard work in the middle and like the fun that you had too. And I think that is so important. And we forget it when we're always thinking about milestones.
I love that.
That's really great.
The last thing I'll add, like before you could take your takeaways, but like I also just to add, I did do egg freezing and I thought it was going to be a lot more painful than it was and scary. And it actually wasn't as bad. And I get other people have like different experiences. But for me, it was like a big fear of just going in and like getting the shots and like all the stuff. And it was not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. So just putting that out there if that helps anyone in any way.
Yeah.
My takeaway is it's okay to plan. It's okay to think into the future. But I think a lot of times we celebrate tangible achievements and like what we produce. It's good to be productive. So getting married, having a kid, that's productive. You're producing something. But the shift for me recently, in recent years, has been celebrating the absence of something, like actually feeling the privilege of the absence of a kid, the absence of a relationship. And it's okay to not be producing all the time, because sometimes not having something could also put you at an advantage for living your life to the fullest.
Oh my God, I love that so much. All things can be true at once. There can be space and room for all emotions. You know, when we talk about comparison, it's okay to feel happy for a friend that's engaged, but also sad if you're not there yet. It's okay to feel, you know, excited to be single, but also want to get married. And so just permission for more feelings at once, and let's not judge them. Let's normalize them. It is such a real emotion to like see a friend produce and then be like, amazing, but you know, and then when we feel like, we're just like, oh my God, I'm the worst friend. And then we judge ourselves. So less judgment, less comparison, more compassion, more celebration.
Love that so much.
So good. So good. Well, Beth, if people want to learn more about you and your practice and your podcast, where can they go to?
Yeah, awesome. So the practice is NYC Therapeutic Wellness. I'm personally not accepting any new clients, but I have a huge team of amazing clinicians that are taking on new clients either virtually or in person. We're in Midtown Manhattan. The podcast is Quiet the Clock, and we are Quiet the Clock Pod on Instagram and TikTok. So you can check us out there. A lot of fun content.
Yes.
Anywhere you can get your podcasts, like Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Yeah, so that's where you can find me.
Love it. We love your podcast, and we will link all of that in the show notes as well.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
And for all of our listeners, while you're searching for both of our podcasts, when you look for Quiet the Clock and Dateable, why don't you leave us a rating and review for both podcasts? 5 stars, and maybe something you learned, or maybe how you've been quieting the clock recently. We love to hear you sharing all of this. And any guys out there feeling that clock tick, like, yes, we could use you on both of our podcasts. Please reach out to us. Tell us your side, your perspective. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Stay dateable.